So once again, I was messing around with live streaming, trying to work out how Streamlabs works, try and get some sound issues sorted. Not sure I got it quite right yet, but I'm still working on it. But one of my audience in the chat asked me about what I thought of the 12.1 cinematic now that Ulutek has been defeated for the first time. So here are my thoughts, let me know what you think. What do I think of the cinematic? Okay, I can tell you what I think of the cinematic. Hang on, let me just pause myself and sit down and I'll talk to you about what I thought of the cinematic. So obviously, spoilers. Spoilers ahead for the cinematic that's just gone live. Went live yesterday on NA because people cleared the raid very quickly. And, last spoiler warning. So first thing I want to say is actually I'm not a huge fan of the cinematic. And that's not to say it wasn't well acted, that's not to say it wasn't well crafted. My main thing is the story with it. I think the fact that we knew from BlizzCon 2023 that Zul'Jin was likely going to be villain battered, it was likely to be a villain due to how they showed the screenshot and what they said about him, kind of tells us a bit about Blizzard's writing. And I think that the reason people loved the Amani so much was due to the chemistry between Zul'Jara and Zul'Jin, right? They were two halves of the same coin. Both wanted what was best for their people, but equally, both had different ways of going about it. Zul'Jara ultimately goes into her style of her uncle, looking to the lower and building that relationship with him, whereas Zul'Jin is very much a case more in the line of their grandfather, which is, the Amani must come first, we will do whatever we can for them. Which meant the two of them were always going to clash, but ultimately, it's the same thing with a lot of things, is both of them had what they thought was best for their people in mind, and that's what they ultimately tried to do. So, the fact that we had these two diametrically opposed people wanting the same goal but going at it in different ways was fantastic. And I think it really gave some good depth and some love to the Armani, and I think it's why Zoloman has been seen as the best, ultimately as the best zone in the 12.0 content. The Coiled Isle, I mean, what I can say is, like, the story content, it's not a story I'm particularly happy to see. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's a story that's been told well. So, and this is your last chance for spoilers, the fact that Zul'Jin dies at the end of the cinematic is disappointing. He kind of got his redemption arc at the end of the Ultra Phalanx dungeon, where he's like, okay, no matter what, my sister comes first, and I'll give up this power, this pursuit of opportunity to raise the Empire, refound the Amani Empire to save my sister, which is a fantastic thing. But the thing of, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry for what I did, I only did what I did because I'm tired of living in your shadow, because I want to stand beside you, because you are the true leader of the Armani. The way it was worded wasn't great, and I think ultimately it does a disservice to Zul'Jara as a character, in the sense that actually being painted as this person that really is a thing of, oh, she knew best all along, she can't make mistakes. And I think ultimately, I think this is ultimately going to be an aid of bringing the Armani in as a playable race. And don't get me wrong, I really want to see the Armani as a playable race. I want to see them as part of the Horde. I think they should be a Horde race, and I think they'll be fantastic in the Horde. But I don't think this is the right way of doing it, in the sense that they've killed all tension with the Armani. They've now made the Armani a one homogenous group, which has kind of been what's been happening in WoW storytelling for a while now. We had this whole thing after Sylvanas left, abandoned the Horde. We had this War Chief Council, this council. There's no war chief anymore. We've got this giant council. And that's not something which has ever happened before, and it's kind of meant that there's really been no Horde leaders in charge. It's everyone's in charge, but there's been no one who's taken charge. And one of those, the reason there was a war chief was because the Horde is a military faction. There's a thing when you go to war, and this is what people need to understand, is actually the Alliance and Horde, they're not they're political organisations, but they're military organisations, right? Every military organisation has a supreme allied commander, right? Has a supreme commander. And so the Horde doing this one homogenous thing has kind of meant the Horde didn't have any leadership. And we next saw it with the Goblins, right? The Goblins now have a council. Obviously, like, Gallywix did his bad stuff. He was really a mob boss running Undermine, but he was the one who ultimately oversaw things. And then we see the Goblins sit around and have a council. And the thing with that council is, like, it kind of kills any disagreements. Like, having a leader who has this idea and having people under them who disagree with them is a really good storytelling device, and it adds real complexity to the world. And it's not a thing of I want there to be World of Peacecraft, and that's a phrase I keep hearing a lot, is this is all an effort of World of Peacecraft, and I don't think that's what they're going for. But I think Blizzard have become so hesitant to write conflict because they're worried of getting it wrong. And there's nothing wrong with getting it wrong. You can have conflict without having fighting. Okay, so you can always do the vanilla thing, whereas the Alliance and Horde are officially at peace, but very clear there's a Cold War going on, right? And there are border skirmishes and nothing to outright declare war on one another, but, you know, there's still the tension deep down. And it's kind of the same thing here, in the sense that ultimately Zul'Jara is going to take the Amani Trolls where she's going to take the Amani Trolls, and that's really what is important. Whereas Zul'Jam would have gone, well, I will follow you because you're my sister and I trust you and you're my family, but that doesn't mean I'm going to trust the Blood Elves, doesn't mean I'm going to trust the Gonki, right? The outsiders. Which is a perfectly valid position to have, because he's still loyal to his sister and he trusts her, but he's not going to trust her new allies, which we saw with the Lower. And so, for Zul'Jam to die like that, sort of ruined that tension and those ideas. And I think ultimately the Amani, as a result, their story is weakened because there's no real opposing view. And you've got to understand that, like, one of those, yes, Blizzard very much painted that Zul'Jan's view was a outsider view, was a very dangerous view, but it was still a view, and it's still a view that many in the Amani Trolls probably would have had. Zul'Jan, for all his flaws, he was very loyal to his people, but he did often get them killed, right? The Lightwood expedition, he got them killed there. And then on unleashing Ulatek, again, he got a lot of people killed, right? He got a lot of them abducted. He unleashed the snake, the children of Ulatek. What the hell is this? He unleashed the children of Ulatek, and that put a real danger to the Armani and to sort of the whole of Quel'Thalas as a result. And that's fine, because ultimately you learn that sometimes you make mistakes, you learn from them. But the fact that he's just gone and he dies, and it's sort of one of those things of, oh, you had the true idea of what the Armani was and I was all wrong. Yeah, well, okay, I'm not so pleased about that, and I don't think I'm particularly happy about that either. I have other issues with the fact of Ulatek not being a lower, but also being described as a lower. Because I've seen some stuff at the raid where Ulatek is described by those who summoned her as a lower. Well, we've been told explicitly that she's not a lower; she's a manifestation of Azeroth's nightmares. And I think Blizzard have kind of confused what a lower is. A lower can be anything, right? So it kind of needs to be looked at in the sense of, because it's an animal spirit and it's worshipped, it can be a lower. It doesn't have to be a wild god, right? Wild gods and lowers can be the same thing, but lowers can be more than just wild gods, right? One Samdi was definitely not a wild god, and yet is a lower. Things like that. So, where I am with this in the whole situation is effectively I think the story is weakened as a result. I think that I think it's being done to bring the Armani into the Horde eventually, which will be very exciting. I think I'm looking forward to that possibly happening. But it's disappointing that we've lost probably the most compelling character of this expansion so far. And my real concern is that this will be used by people who are not genuine in the community and people who want to start a fight, and it'll become a culture war issue. Because I already saw rumblings on X or Twitter, and I've seen it sort of on forum threads. I've seen it on the WoW forums and MMO Champion. A lot of people were saying, well, this patch is the girl squad crew, right? Zul'Jara, Liadrin, and Olwayna going round, and the boys are all wrong, etc., etc. And that is not a view I agree with. That's not a view I stand for. But my concern is, once again, killing the character who for a lot of people is the best character of the expansion. The fact that he's painted in the way he's been painted, it gives fuel to their argument, even though it's not legitimate fuel. It still gives fuel to their argument, and that's a dangerous thing. So I'm not looking forward to seeing the discourse on this, because ultimately, I think people will use it to further their own agenda, which worries me deeply in sort of a beyond the game perspective. I mean, this patch in general does worry me in terms of the future of the story for WoW, because I think really we're reaching a point where the gameplay is quite good. I enjoy when I play WoW. I'm really enjoying my time playing the game. I'm someone who used to be a role player quite a bit. I've not role played in a really long time, and I really want to get back into role play. I just haven't found a group who I can role play with, and I've not really spent enough time on my WoW server to sort of find where the RP is these days. I need to get back into that. So the gameplay is quite good for someone who logs on sort of once, twice a week. One of those, I've got quests I can do, I've got things I can do, I've got reputations I can do. I'm quite happy with stuff, like I love Prey and stuff. But the story hasn't gone down well. I think the reunification of the elves was rushed. I think I disagree with the Silver Sun Compact in the sense that that sort of dissolves the High Elves as an identity in the people, because actually they are an important people. They are the ones who didn't accept the Fel. They are the ones who stayed with the Alliance, and they forced themselves into exile. It's a very similar story to the Draenei. That's one of the reasons I like the High Elves and the Draenei so much, because it is, for having moral principles, you face consequences and things which aren't fun, and you suffer as a result. So I'm not a fan of that. So I think I'm not thrilled with that. I still am not pleased about the fact that they've just got rid of Dalaran forever, and the Kirin Tor are effectively now as a organisation are now defunct. I think that's a terrible decision. So it's an interesting thing, because sort of as someone who has recently begun making YouTube videos and started streaming World of Warcraft, because I'm enjoying the game, I am enjoying the game, but someone who loves the story, it's becoming increasingly difficult to sort of be like, okay, I'm enjoying this. I think it's pretty obvious where we're going next with the thing. Patch 12.1.5 is a one boss raid, and I think I know well, it's pretty obvious if you know the story, if you know the lore, what the next boss will be. I won't spoil it for those who don't know. And 12.2, we very clearly know where that's going. That's been data mined as to where we're going, and sort of if you look at the 12.0 content very carefully, there's which directions does Xal'atath go at the end of the cinematic, and March of Queldon Ash, he goes down, right? So yes, once again we're probably going to go underground. Where this time? well, probably the world core again. So we're going underground. So that's something we need to be prepared for. And then obviously we know we've got the last Titan coming up. BlizzCon is less than a month away. I don't know how much of stuff we're going to see at the last Titan at BlizzCon. I think that's something which we need to be prepared, because obviously by the time we get to BlizzCon, obviously Ulatech will be down for the race towards first, so I imagine we'll see a lot more of 12.1.5, which is going to introduce the Super Delve, the Labyrinth. But beyond that, I'm not sure how much they're going to give us towards the last Titan, which will be interesting. And I'm worried for that. I'm excited for Classic Plus though. I think that'll be interesting. As someone who never played Classic but has recently sort of found it and enjoyed playing it a bit, that's been quite fun. So we'll see where that goes. But sort of that's a long rambling thing. But in essence, that's my thing on the cinematic. I think it was I think well crafted, well acted, amazing performances, and amazing craftsmanship gone into that cinematic, and well done to everyone who took part in it. However, I do not think the story was good. I think the consequences are not good in terms of the story, but I also think for real world politics, I'm concerned people are going to use it for their own nefarious ends. But yeah, so those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. And that's my view of the story coming out of the 12.1 raid cinematic. And you're welcome to disagree with me. I mean, that's what story's all about. You can agree, disagree, however you like. Just be respectful in the comments if you do disagree. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which will hopefully be coming very soon.